Okay, so just a quick background on who the heck I am. My name's Karen. I started Radiant Marketing in 2015. I started my first agency in 2011, but really since 2008 is when I knew my purpose was to help small businesses. When I was in college, I joined a small group of ASU students to help the Phoenix businesses along the light rail being affected by the construction. Their storefronts were closed. And so we got together as a team to create creative marketing campaigns to really help them stay open during that time. And I realized then that that was a passion of mine. So in 2011, I quit my job and started my first agency that same year. I was planning my wedding, got married, all because I knew this is really what I wanted to do. So since then, we've served small businesses throughout Arizona and beyond, providing digital marketing strategy and implementation with a unique combination, we believe, of creative and analytical skills that really help businesses bring possibilities to life. So I wanted to start off with a quote, both because I'm absolutely obsessed with Marie Forleo and everything she says is I feel like great advice all the time, but nothing in life is that complicated. You can do whatever you set your mind to if you just roll up your sleeves, get in there and do it. I feel like a lot of people are very intimidated by marketing. And as a result, they kind of freeze up and don't do what they really should be doing to grow their business. And really strategy and planning is incredibly important, but doing the work is the most important, because unless you get in there and start actually executing on the marketing strategy, then obviously you're not going to get the outcomes you want. So today I want to make sure I'm giving you actionable tips, immediate takeaways, and accessible resources that you can implement as soon as this call is over. So the topic, creating emails that drive results. Today we're going to talk more specifically, about email broadcasts or mass emails, but I will touch a little bit on personalization and segmentation, because that is a big factor in influencing return on your email investment. And as a matter of fact, HubSpot had a resource that had just an email marketing survey that just went out that said there was a 760% increase in revenue from email marketing when you send segmented campaigns. And by segmented campaigns, I simply mean grouping your contact database into different categories and then sending communication based on those categories. So we'll talk a little bit about that. 80% of small businesses use email for customer acquisition and or customer retention. Email is still a huge and important way to communicate with prospects and customers to help your business grow. It's a significant way to influence consumer purchase decisions, and unlike social media and other third-party sites, you have much more control over your email. So in today's world, we have to stay in front of our audiences even more than ever. But even more than ever before, we really need to create emails that add value to our audience's lives. We're inundated with crappy stuff all the time, and we don't want our own brand to be an addition to that. So it's not just about frequency and consistency, it's also very much so about value. On average, emails generate $38 for every dollar spent. So you might not necessarily be there yet, but the goal is to start working towards that. That's a significant return on investment. So definitely something to think about when you're thinking of the channels that you're including in your marketing strategy. So the big question, are your emails quote unquote working? First, what the heck does working mean? Second, how will you know? And third, what do you have to do to make it work? And these are all questions that we want to answer, or help you answer, or at least start getting the right questions asked today. And this is something that we see so often when we're starting to work with a client. They come to us and they're like, my email's not working, my social media is not working, my advertising's not working. And we're like, okay, let's figure out why. So first thing, what is working? What does success mean to you? And 9 times out of 10, they can't answer that. So if you can't answer that, you're not alone. A lot of people haven't set those specific success metrics. So we definitely want to talk about that, because that's going to be key to all of the other steps. So creating emails that drive results. First, setting your goals, which is going to determine what working means. Next, tracking results, which is understanding then if it's working. And lastly, how to craft your emails, which is going to get you to help understand how to get it to work. So first, talking about setting your goals. And I should probably mention right now that I have a toy chihuahua that will most likely bark while I'm speaking. So I apologize in advance. So setting your goals is going to allow you to understand what working means. And I definitely want to talk about your email goals. But before we dive into that, I want to briefly talk about your business goals. And the reason for that is because Success demands singleness of purpose. Marketing, including your email, should really align with your business goals. It shouldn't be operating in a silo or on a whim. They should be strategic and planned and get you closer to meeting your big business goals. So what are your business goals? This is where you're going to think about those strategic long-term goals or your annual goals, the goals that really support the why behind the reason for starting your business. So for example, some of these goals might be launching new initiatives like a referral program, elevating your customer experience and retention, impacting a certain number of lives by a certain year, or making a certain amount of money for a specific reason. These are all great things to consider as your business goals, and then asking yourself, what role does your email marketing play in those big business goals? So from there, you would be setting your email goals. So the email goals are going to be a little more tactical, the how behind reaching the business goals. And these goals will influence the metrics that you are monitoring and the email design, copy, etc., all of that. So in this talk, I've outlined 3 types of goals, and these goals can change from email to email, and we typically find that having a mix is the most effective. So depending on your business model, it's helpful to plan about 6 to 12 months in advance, but knowing that you should build some flexibility into that, because as you're monitoring the results of things, you can pivot, you can change, you can shift. So don't feel like once you set your plan, if you don't follow your plan, you're failing. We definitely suggest instead being more open-minded and being more flexible. And the nice thing with digital is you can very quickly monitor results and make those changes so that you're not continuously doing something that's not working. So definitely plan, but plan to be flexible too. So the first email goal is education. Depending on your business goals, you may simply want your emails to support you in increasing awareness about a cause or a mission or your brand in general. And while this may be the case for specific emails, it's less commonly the goal for your entire strategy. So an education goal may be the case if you're building your list and communicating with your audience before you launch a product or a service or open a new location. This was one of, a big focus for us with one of our clients that we started year before last, where she was actually opening a brewery in Phoenix. And for the first 8 months, there was really nothing anybody could do except for be educated on the types of beers she was offering, her mission in getting more women to drink beer over wine, and really just staying in front of them and updating them on the construction of the brewery, and allowing her to keep that contact until they could actually do something. The second goal is connection. So for most businesses, it's super important to stay connected with your contacts to keep them engaged with your brand. The more positive interactions consumers have with your brands, the more likely they are to repurchase, refer, or recommend you. So connection goal emails typically encourage viewers to take a tiny step, like click, watch, download, or engage with your brand in some way. An example of a connection goal may be if you offer a monthly or annual subscription solution or like a software solution. In these cases, staying connected throughout the year is critical for them to continue to see the value in renewing and increasing your retention as a result. Alternatively, your connection goal may be more so to simply create a positive or emotional experience. So say you're a nonprofit, wanting your donors to see the impact that they have, and you want them to watch a video that explains, what's taken place over the last month or so. So that connection and brand affinity may not always drive immediate revenue or directly trackable revenue, but it can influence decisions and ultimately impact that. It also can put you ahead of your competitors. It can increase retention, repurchase, referrals. So there's a lot of positive outcomes from a connection goal. And then lastly is revenue. An obvious one, and one we hope that is at the core of all of our marketing initiatives, is generating revenue. So in some cases, this is super easy to track, like if you're an e-commerce brand, you're selling products online. But in many cases, that path to purchase is a little bit blurrier, or the final purchase is actually happening offline. So there's some manual work that may go into connecting that revenue back to your digital efforts or your email marketing. So defining and tracking the best we can really helps make informed decisions moving forward. Which leads us into tracking results. I'm sure we've all heard what gets measured gets managed, but we like to say what gets measured gets better. I would say, again, 7 to 8 times out of 10 when we start working with a client, many of them have no monitoring or analytics in place to show how things have been going up until that point. So that's one of the first things we do, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But let's talk specifically about selecting your metrics based on your goal. So if your goal is education, some of the things that you want to be paying attention to would be open rates, possibly click rates, depending on how your email is structured. Time spent viewing the email. So a lot of platforms, email platforms now allow you to see this, which is really interesting to know, are they just glancing at it? Are they skimming it? Or are they really reading the content that I have in my email? So looking to see, if this is important for you to know, finding an email marketing platform that supports that data. Next is email and social shares. So again, if you're a nonprofit trying to get the word out, or if you have an upcoming brand launch, product launch, new location, you want people to share that. You want people to forward your email. You want people to share it through social. So that's another really key metric to monitor there for education. And then the goal of connection. So a lot of the same statistics plus some. So we've got open rates. We want to look at click rates. We want to look at email and social shares. But then we want to take it a little bit further and look at a few more things. Activity on website. So for connection, this might just be the time that they're spending on the site. So if you're sending out an email that then leads them to a blog post, and the blog post is extensive and you want them to read through to the end, knowing that they're staying on the site for a little bit longer is important. What content are they viewing when they are there? So also looking at, which of those articles are they clicking through to, and do they go on to read other things? Bounce rate is a metric you can look at as well. So bounce rate just means the percentage of visitors that get to your site and then leave after viewing only one page. So in some cases, this doesn't matter if your visitors are going to the site and leaving after one page. That might be your goal. Like, we just want them to read this one piece of content, or we just want them to go to the contact page, whatever it might be. But typically a good benchmark there, or a baseline to go for, is anything under 50%. And then looking at next step actions. So for example, if you're a restaurant and you sent out a recipe that kind of aligns with the products that you're the foods that you offer, and you want them to go to the website and then download that recipe or watch a video, monitoring those specific metrics as they relate back to your email are very important. And then to see all this data by just the default settings within Google Analytics, you can monitor most of these things. So if you don't have analytics on your website now, I would strongly recommend you set up Google Analytics. It's a free tool, and you immediately get access to all of this information and start to compile that data so that you can make informed decisions moving forward. This is an example of an email that went out for one of our clients, and you can see here some of that data you would get if you were using Google Analytics. So this shows you the number of users, which is actually people going to the site, the visits, as well as some of these statistics I mentioned, pages, bounce rate, pages per session, and average session duration. So in general, with this client, this is something that we, consider fairly successful. They stayed on the site nearly 2 minutes. They visited multiple pages. Bounce rate is good. We had people go to the site and then come back, as you can see from the sessions being higher than the users. So this information is very valuable to us to know then what was sent in that email, if it was effective, if we should resend. And then I'll show you a little bit more data to even further that information. So next, with connection, you have referrals is a metric you can monitor in connection with this goal, and then retention. So again, if your goal is to stay connected so that they're renewing with you or that they're coming back for repurchase, retention is a very important metric to pay attention to. And lastly, we have revenue. So if your goal for your email is revenue, we want to look at all the same things we mentioned: open rates, click rates, website activity. But we also want to look at more specific things that directly tie to revenue. So if you have the coupons in your email, monitoring the number of coupon redemptions. And our key recommendation on this, if you are offering some sort of promotion or coupon, is to always make those unique to the channel that you're offering them through. So we see a lot of times businesses will offer the same promotion across all their channels. They might have something in a mailer, in a print publication, in an ad, in something posted on their social, in their email. And so while you might in general be able to say, hey, this was successful, I invested this much money across all these channels, and I did see a return on my investment, to really drill down into that data and understand which of these channels is actually driving that revenue, we recommend doing unique promotions across, unique promotions per channel. So the promotion that's going to go out in an email is going to be different than what you post in an ad. So you can see, you might be spending thousands of dollars a year on an ad in a publication. And then once you start tracking it, come to find out that that isn't generating anything and everything's coming from email, for example. And we find that very often. So last step, digital actions. So this would be where you don't have an e-commerce store, you can't track direct revenue through your website. And in this case, you would want to make sure you're tracking the last step that they can take online. And to do this, we recommend typically setting up goals in Google Analytics. Some of these goals are fairly simple to set up. And that would just be, say, a contact form submission for a consult request or a meet and greet. We work with a lot of health and wellness brands that's the last thing you can do online. And then their team takes it from there with a phone call, getting them scheduled to come meet a doctor or whatever that might be. So we want to see, how many of these visitors coming to the site are actually requesting a consultation. And then ultimately, how many of those consultations are turning into, patients or clients or whatever that might be. So setting up those goals in Google Analytics will give you some great visibility into that. And this is just another example of an email that went out and then the goal that was tracked for that, which was sample requests. And you can see here, when you have those goals set up, you can see how many visits came from the email, all those same statistics, but then you also can see those conversions. So you can see the percentage of people that got to the site that converted, so almost 12%. And you can see how many. So we generated 19 sample requests from this, which was considered very successful when, in this case, the client's customer lifetime value is well into the thousands of dollars. So then, obviously, if you're e-commerce sales, you want to track that. This is much easier. So you're at a advantage here because it's definitely requires less manual work. In Google Analytics, again, there's an e-commerce tracking portion. So you can simply activate that, and then you'd have access to this data. So you could see transactions, products purchased, where they're coming from. And again, here's another example of that drilled down to, instead of goals, this time e-commerce conversions. And again, you can see, this email drove these visits, this time on site, but also then 15 transactions and $1,200, $1,300 in revenue. And then I have this, and I can send this link separately because I don't know if it'll be, do you guys send this deck out to everybody after?
I'll post the recording. And I could put it along with the slideshow deck.
Okay.
And also put any links inside the chat box.
Oh, perfect. Okay, I will do that. I'll add this to the chat box now. But this is just an example of a tracking template you could consider implementing. And I included some samples here to give you an idea of what this would look like. And then down to, what the revenue was you generated from the campaign, what your investment was. This could be something where you're actually, calculating your own time, because believe it or not, even as entrepreneurs, our time is valuable. So tracking that, and then understanding what your return on your investment was. And of course, right out the gate, you're going to see this is probably pretty low potentially, and I don't want you to get frustrated by that. As you track it and you learn, you'll be able to make good decisions and improve this over time. But I'll share that with you in the chat as well. So last is secrets to success. So this is going to be in actually creating your email. And so some of the things I'm going to share here are more, benchmarks and industry standards. But of course, a lot of this is going to depend on your business and your audience. But our job is to make change. Our job is to interact with our customers in a way that leaves them better than we found them, more able to get to where they'd like to go. I like to share this quote because, again, I feel like some people get hesitant to do marketing or feel like it's icky. And if you stay focused on the idea that you created your business and you're providing your customers with these products and solutions because it's going to make their lives better, or it's going to improve something in some way, that is why you're doing marketing. Because getting your message out is going to help create that connection and drive that action that's going to improve the lives of your audiences. So I think keeping this in mind helps create that positive mindset when you're working on your marketing. So the first success secret, growing and using a good list. So what do I mean by good? I mean a list that's both high quality in data and opportunities. So to me, a list of 100 high quality contacts is much better than a list of 10,000 crappy ones. So this could be a whole presentation in itself. If you have other questions about generating your list or creating a list, feel free to reach out to me. But so we're just going to stick to the basics here. First, implementing good list building techniques. So easy, add forms to your website. If you don't have a contact form or if you don't have subscribe forms, that's a great place to start converting your visitors, your website visitors, into contacts so you can continue to communicate with them on an ongoing basis. And you could do this where you're asking them to subscribe, or they're just submitting a contact form and then you want to continue to communicate with them. You could do this in exchange for an offer like a guide or a recipe or something similar to that. You can add pop-ups to the site. So if you do this in a tasteful way, it has proven to increase conversions when you have multiple places that people can convert. And there are a lot of free tools out there to do this. So if you have a WordPress site, there's WordPress plugins that make adding pop-ups to your site fairly easy. HubSpot's CRM is free, and it also has this marketing component that allows you to add pop-ups to your website. So there's definitely some good tools out there to make this simple and something you can implement, fairly quickly. And if you are starting from scratch with your list, we always recommend leaning on your existing network and contacts if and when possible. So encouraging them to refer other contacts to your database, possibly giving prizes, doing giveaways, and definitely if you are doing giveaways, having them be brand relevant. So don't just hand out an iPad, give something that's going to relate back to your business so you know that you're building your list based on people that are potentially going to be interested in what you're offering. So it's kind of like the giveaway would be a lead-in to what you would be selling to them eventually. So that way that list is high quality in terms of the potential to convert. And if you are buying a list, because yes, people buy lists, it is still a thing, it might be okay, but make sure you validate that it's a vetted list, it's up-to-date information, that it's high quality in terms of the audience that's on it, and that it's a good fit for your solutions. So bad data can hurt you, especially if you're using those lists for email marketing. And you also want to be careful because most platforms don't allow you to import purchase lists. So if you're doing that, you're violating their rules. I mean, you still can, they don't technically know, but if you do import it and it is a bad list, then you could get shut down. MailChimp is one of the ones that's a little more stringent about that. So they have like their omnivore warning, which you import your list, you send your first campaign and you have a high bounce rate, it could block you and shut down your account. So you just want to be really careful about that. Our recommendation a lot of times, if you already have purchased a list and you've spent money on it, you're like, I don't want this to go to waste, is to actually use it for advertising. So with something like Facebook, you can upload your list, create a custom audience, and then encourage that list to subscribe so you can start emailing them. I mean, it's definitely a more multi-step process, but if you did purchase something and you don't want it to go to waste, that's a great way to leverage that list. List segmentation. So this could be just something done in the collection stage through implicit or explicit information. So basically explicit through form fields that they're saying, oh, I'm interested in this specific thing, or I am a woman, which means that I want, I might be more interested in this product or a certain type of content. And then implicit might be something that's more about, which form they're filling out or what type of content they're downloading. And that, again, could then influence the ongoing communication with them. So some collection examples: someone that downloads a certain offer gets tagged for future communication around that offer. Someone that puts in that they're in Queen Creek gets location-specific updates about your Queen Creek location only. They don't want to know about Phoenix, most likely. So just avoiding too much irrelevant information if you have this type of data on your contacts. And re-engage or delete. I know people get very attached to their lists and they would rather send to people that are never opening them than simply archiving or deleting them, but we encourage you to remove those contacts for a number of reasons. One, it could affect your deliverability. If your emails are consistently going into a ton of people's spam boxes, that might mean your emails aren't going to get into the inboxes of people that actually want your information. So we're always wary to be sending to email addresses that are not opening ever. And I don't know how many of you on this call have it, but a lot of people I know have like a separate junk email that they use for subscriptions. You want to get rid of those junk emails in your list because they can hurt your deliverability. Also, if you're using this list, your data is not very good. You're basing it on people that have never opened emails, that have never engaged with your content. So you're trying to make decisions based on a big portion of people that you really don't care about. What we do care about is the people that have engaged, that have opened. So it's skewing your numbers to keep them in there, and you're trying to cater to a disengaged audience. So there are a lot of the email marketing platforms allow you to export archives, so you can save them. You don't have to delete them and burn them and never see them again. If that makes you feel better, you can just archive them and then come back to them later if you wanted to. So the second one, following email best practices. First, looking at your message. Will it resonate with your audience? Is it simple? Is it outcomes benefit focused? Are you able to make your customer the hero of the story, the focus, putting that more on them than on your brand? The perfect subject line. For open rate and deliverability, minimal punctuation, about 40 characters is typically optimal from numerous tests that email marketing platforms do. So this is a recommendation to, I would say, implement as, across the board. Of course, you don't have to say, I need to fit the 40 characters or this email's not going to be good. But just knowing that there's tons of data to show that range or getting around that number is going to influence open rates. Possibly adding emojis. If you have your inbox and you see an email that has an emoji, typically that's going to pop out at you. So obviously don't overdo it, but if you have an emoji that is relevant to your brand, and not using emojis to communicate the message, you still want to have words in your subject line because sometimes the emojis won't show. So if you do only emojis, then there might be no subject line for people. So using them to add to your subject line, not to replace it. And then, of course, basic, avoiding excessive capitalization. That is right there, a spam filter. So if you're doing that, there's a good chance your emails are going straight to spam instead of people's inboxes. And the struggle between being mysterious and telling them exactly what they're going to get. And as much as we like the idea of quirky, mysterious emails, and they're tempting to do time and time again, research shows that being straightforward, telling them exactly what's in the email is going to be the most effective. So even if you have a quirky, mysterious email subject line and you get a high open rate, that doesn't necessarily tell you that that audience is interested in what you're going to communicate with them. So, that clickbaity type subject line might get you an open rate, but not a good indicator still of actual interest. So, for example, saying, "You'll never guess what we have in store for you, ... And they're like, "Ooh, what is it?" And they open it, and what it is isn't necessarily of interest to them, where you might instead say, "Now offering happy hour prices until 8 p.m. And then anybody that opens that email is interested in those happy hours specials. So calls to action. We recommend one call to action for most emails, especially bottom of the funnel emails or revenue focused emails. Granted, if you're e-commerce, you might do like a spotlight product and then a few other products, but definitely not overwhelming with calls to action and trying to avoid a whole bunch of calls to action in one email, like learn now, learn more, download this, buy this. As soon as you offer too many options, people get overwhelmed and tend to not take action. And then depending on your email and the business goals, that call to action obviously is going to vary. You don't want every single email you send to be a buy now call to action. You want to have a balance there, and definitely having an overarching strategy to follow is a great way to make sure you're creating that balance. Making it clear and concise too. So buy now, shop our collection, learn more, get started are all good examples. And then linking tastefully, but in multiple places. So you don't want to just have one link, because research again shows that people are going to click on the image, link that. People are going to click on a button, link that. People are going to click on hyperlink text throughout the copy, link that. Don't overdo it, but do have a few different places, because consumer behavior is different. Some people click on buttons, some people click on images, some people click on links. So having all those options can help increase those click-throughs. And then images. Don't include important text on images. Try to avoid that. We'll have clients, when we first start working with them, sending an email that's one image that has all their text on it. And then we tell them, there's a good chance 15 to 20% of your recipients are actually not getting images come through in their email. So literally they see nothing from this email. It's just one little broken image. So including images is good. We do recommend having some in there, but never having it so that if the image doesn't show, they don't understand the purpose of the email. And you've probably seen some emails come through now that have little GIFs in them. We love that. It catches the eye. It adds a little element of movement that can set your email apart and get people to read through. And then brand, making sure everything matches and is recognizable, consistent. The fonts you use, the images, the colors, the shapes, the buttons, having that consistency can really help create a familiarity and a connection with your brand. So this is just an example of, you know, what we call our brand guides or style guides. We have guidelines that we follow for clients and that are that their other vendors follow. So this is, you know, something that you could do. For example, having brand palette, typography, even just doing like a Pinterest board or a shared Google folder where you kind of compile what these do's and don'ts of your brand would be. And then having, you know, example imagery. So if you have anyone else on your team that's helping support your marketing or do your social media or send your emails, they're all kind of following that same look and feel so that your brand is recognizable across all your channels. And third, optimize your sending and your deliverability rates. So there's some things I've mentioned already that are helpful for doing this, but a couple of other tips here: picking the right days and times. And this is one that definitely depends on your audience, but if you want a starting place, if you're business to business, if you're business to business, it's often set to send between Tuesday to Thursday, either early in the morning or midday, right around lunch, after lunch. And granted, a lot of this has been, you know, thrown to the wind with COVID and people working from home. But the good news is that all trends are moving in the positive direction from email marketing. People are opening emails more, they're engaging with content more. So if there is a time to start your email marketing or refine it a little bit, it's now. And then there's other options too. Most email marketing platforms, even some of the free ones, allow you to send by time zone if you have people across the nation or the world. And then spacing things out. If you have a ton of contacts in your database, sending it over time so that you don't overwhelm inboxes at the same time. That helps with deliverability. And then, like I said, some tools give you that best time to send, which is actually an algorithm that they calculate based on historical data and or time zones, contact details. They don't tell you exactly how they do it, but we found it to be very successful for increasing open rates and sendability, is using those best time to send options. And it's literally a matter, like with MailChimp, of clicking best time to send. MailChimp's like does all their calculations and then determines what time that would be. So you don't have to do any of that thinking, which is great because we all got so much going on anyways. So next is authenticating your DKIM. This is something that helps with deliverability fairly significantly. So if you don't have an IT person or someone on your team that's more techie or your developer, this would be somewhere where you might want to turn to like Fiverr or Upwork or one of those similar hourly independent contractor networks to just hire someone for 2 hours to take this off your plate. So you don't spend 15 hours trying to figure this out. Instead, you pay someone $15 an hour to take care of it for you. So that in those types of cases, we always recommend, you know, using those resources instead of spending your valuable time tinkering around with something that's going to take you a ton of hours. Removing hard bounces, same as keeping that clean list. If you have hard bounces, this means that they've bounced multiple times, the email doesn't exist, so they're valueless to you. Removing them from the list so that you don't affect your deliverability is a critical step to take. So keeping that list clean, keeping that data valuable or good. And then personalize the from field. This is an option in almost every email marketing platform. It just adds a little bit of an instant connection with the viewer. And it has proven to help with open rates and engagement. And then setting a good frequency. Don't overdo it. Gauge engagement to adjust your strategy as you go. So you might initially plan to send every 2 weeks, and then you find that you're really not getting good engagement. Maybe adjusting your strategy to just send monthly, because really the key here is that you're sending when you have valuable things to send. It's not just sending because it's on the schedule and I got to get this out. You want to make sure that you're sending things that they actually are going to care about and you have add value to their lives. So some examples of emails we feel are powerful and well done. This one is from Parsley Health, which is a holistic integrative functional medicine practice across the country, wildly successful startup started by Robin Burswin. That's gotta love those female-owned businesses. Subject line, are you chronically stressed? And then super simple copy here, one image that's related, and one call to action button. So you know what they want you to do here is learn about if you're chronically stressed, but also to understand that this is a topic that they, and a specialty that they address with their practice. This is a nonprofit that rescues moon bears, which is something that I recently got involved with. So this is an example of a connection email. They're really trying to create a connection with their donors to show the impact that they're having. So in this case, they want you to watch this video of the 2 cubs that were recently rescued, but there's also opportunities to share the information, to forward the email. And again, the subject line, you help 2 tiny cubs find sanctuary, very straightforward, definitely piques your curiosity. You want to read, engage. And these are so, and I know, nonprofits a lot of times have a little bit of an advantage because they do have more opportunities to create an emotional connection. But anytime you're able to elicit an emotional connection with your audience, that brand affinity and that brand recall significantly increases. And what's interesting is that, it's across all emotions. You can create any emotional response and it helps increase that recall. But positive reactions are actually better, which is nice to know. So, there are, if you can create a positive experience, a happy emotion, then the chances of people remembering that, retelling that story are going to increase. Another example, another nonprofit, this one is similar connection goals, the subject simply to say thanks, and they want you to watch the video. This is a subscription service, Grove Collaborative, so you subscribe, have household products, a whole variety of things ordered. This is an example of, their subject line, VIPs enter now with the goal of revenue. All their calls to action are encouraging you to shop their products, shop their store, shop VIP day. And they have a sense of urgency here, which is great because then this is going to end. I have to do this now. So that's another good example. And then we had asked for some examples and we got one from Steve. Thank you, Steve, for sharing. So we included 2 of those here and just wanted to kind of quickly review these so you guys could see a real life Queen Creek example. And in general, so our feedback on these is that they are well done. They're focused. There's one call to action. It's clear what is to be done in these. I think in general, we would give us a B+ grade. There's a couple of things we might recommend to further optimize this. As you can see here, the subject lines have the American Legion post 129. One of them's in the beginning, one of them's in the end. If you are going to include that, we would recommend including it in the same place every time. So it's, again, there's consistency there. But depending on the from address, we might actually say take this out if you can, because then that gives you some more room in your subject line to play with the copy and to include some additional information. So some examples, with this Queen Creek Holiday Festival, making that booth assistance more noticeable within the subject line and making the subject lines very action oriented could be helpful. So, in this case, for example, it might be something like, help out at the holiday festival, sign up for the booth, something that drives that call to action and that actionability within the subject line. Same thing with the Saturday morning coffee. That might be, adding a join us, an RSVP, because it looks like you are asking for an RSVP. So informing them in the subject line, RSVP now or RSVP by Friday. So again, creating some urgency there, but then also giving them an actionable next step before they even open the email. Another small recommendation might be to add a button to, the sign up here one. You've got the hyperlink, which is great, possibly adding a button which can catch people's attention and they definitely click on buttons quite a bit more. That's, typically the most clicked on item within an email. So possibly adding that to the sign up here. And then for the RSVP one, making that call to action much more prominent. So, making that please RSVP by replying to this email, a focus either through, another color, making that font larger, but something that shows clearly what do you want them to do. But in general, I think these are really good. And this is an example too of something of like understanding your audience. These emails don't have to be super fancy. They don't have to be, really modern necessarily. We're just trying to communicate some information here. And I think that was well done. From a branding perspective, I might recommend including some imagery that would allow you to create that emotional connection I mentioned before. So you might have images from past events that would be really great to include in this, that show, both give them some context of what to expect with the event, but show possibly even someone creating an impact or creating a connection at the event that could help drive them to want to volunteer or attend. So thank you so much, Steve, for sharing those. I think it's really helpful for us to see those examples because they can be so different from business to business and effective in their own ways. So wrapping it up, you got this, guys. Don't let yourself get overwhelmed. Make sure you understand your business goals, how those relate to your email goals or how your email goals relate to your business goals. Tracking your metrics so that you're monitoring if you're actually reaching those goals. Building and using good lists, making sure that you're communicating with people that care about your products, and if they're not opening, get rid of them and focus on the ones that do. Follow best practices, pay attention to your subject line, send at good times, use reliable platforms. All those are key to getting those emails into inboxes. And then adjust and optimize. You don't have to stick with the plan that you set out at the beginning of the year. You can change that plan and using the data you're collecting to make those decisions. So don't just decide because you feel like something isn't working. Decide because you know and you're tracking and you want to make adjustments based on that. That's it. That's all I got. I think I talked as fast as I possibly could to try to squeeze all of this in. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Well, it looks like nobody has any questions. So thank you, Karen. That was that was very helpful. I took away some stuff, and I hope everybody else did too. So thanks for joining us.
Awesome. You're welcome. It's good to be here. And you had shared my email address, but I'll drop that in the chat too if anybody wants to send me a quick note or ask me a quick question. I'm happy to help. And I'll share that link to that tracking template in case anybody, basically, when you open that up, you just download it and you can use your own copy.